right, let's do it. Welcome to Hire, Retain, and Train, building a Rockstar Pool Service team. Folks, we're very lucky today because we have Kyle Peter out of California joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us for what we hope is a really great webinar. We put together quite a few resources that we're going to share and some information. Hopefully there's something that you take away here as you think about scaling and growing your own teams. I'm your hostess, Niki Acosta. I am joined today by Kyle. Kyle, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Kyle Peter. I'm the owner of Nevergreen Pools. We started about 7 years ago with a postcard mailing and one pickup truck. And now we have over 20 employees and over 1,000 pools we visit weekly.
And Kyle, one reason why I wanted to bring you on for this particular webinar is because you had such a great career starting as a single puller, and then getting into repairs. And over a very short period of time, I think you're servicing well over 1,000 pools at this point. So thank you to you for joining us and sharing all of your resources and your wealth and expertise and knowledge with our audience today.
Looking forward to it.
So the obligatory About Skimmer slide. I am the director of marketing at Skimmer, and our mission here is to empower you to build a great business. And the way that we do that is through the Skimmer app and our web platform. We do that by consistently listening to your feedback and adding new features. We do that by hosting webinars and giving you content and resources and guides that you can use as you grow your business. And we do that through a community, the Pool Deck community, of which Kyle is a part of. So if you are thinking about Skimmer and you're not an existing Skimmer user, and you think maybe you can't afford it, think again. All of the data that we have has shown us that folks who use Skimmer grow 3 to 4 times faster than the industry average. You're able to make better decisions, you have more visibility, you're able to deliver a more consistent experience to your customers, and it more than pays for itself, especially when it comes to the things that you probably don't like spending time on, like processing invoices and collecting payment. We have a lot to cover today. We're going to give you a little bit of background around the pool service industry and employment data there. We're going to talk about attracting and hiring, onboarding and training, retaining, motivating, and keeping your teams productive, how Kyle thinks about scaling and planning for the future, and then we will get into Q&A. And again, we have a Q&A feature in Zoom. If you'd like to ask us a question, feel free to ask that in the Q&A. I already have one asking Kyle if all of his clients are commercial pools or residential.
Yeah, we are 100% residential.
Residential. All right. So here we go. Pool service industry employment. So, we do the state of pool service survey every year. We've done it for the last couple of years. And one of the things that we constantly see is that one of the top 3 challenges is around people when it comes to hiring and finding and retaining top talent. So we wanted to put this webinar together to hopefully give you some tips on how to overcome that challenge. If you think about what you're spending money on in your business, Kyle, you asked your team what you thought the biggest expense was, and what was their reply?
A lot of them thought the fleet, the vehicles.
And that's not the case, right? It's people.
Not at all. Yeah. Yep.
So
almost half of our revenue is spent on payroll and payroll expenses, benefits.
And so when you think about hiring and retaining employees and the costs of bringing on new employees, we did a survey. We looked at some small business data and we asked around in some groups. And what we found was that it takes somewhere for most people, between $2,500 and $10,000 is what they're spending on hiring and onboarding and training new employees. For some companies, that went up to $20,000, right? If you're a very large company and you have HR people, all those costs kind of factor in. So to the extent that you can hire the right candidates and also keep them on board, it's a great way to save money and to be able to grow in a sustainable way. And that's why we wanted to put this together today. We looked at the average salary of pool technicians in the US. This comes from Indeed.com. You can look it up for your individual states or your areas, but $22.70 an hour, not a bad gig. And you look at the salaries of pool service managers in the US, almost $64,000 or $30.63 an hour. So when we're thinking about people in general, just understand that that you want to get it right because it is very, very costly to have constant turnover. Not to mention when you do have turnover and there's attrition and you're understaffed, your morale in your company drops, your service quality suffers, and it may end up getting you some bad reviews and hurting your reputation. Anything you want to add there, Kyle?
I was just going to add that because the cost to hire and employ someone is such a big part of your business, you can really move the needle. Whereas if you get a few dollars off a bucket of tabs, it's not moving the needle. And I'm not saying we want to pay people less. We just want to be more efficient in who we hire, how we hire, and most importantly, retain the right people.
Great. So let's talk about attracting and hiring. How do you source candidates and what are the best things that you have found that work, Kyle?
So our go-to is definitely the online hiring sites. We use Indeed and Craigslist. We go back and forth between the two. They're definitely different. You have a little bit more of a more sophisticated applicant on Indeed, and you potentially have someone that's just scrolling through looking for a job on Craigslist. Also, talk to your networks in IPSA and different trade associations, distributors. Put the word out there. Say, hey, we're looking for this, looking for that. You can also vet people that have experience. What I've found recently is your local distributors have a wealth of knowledge in all aspects of your business. So definitely talk to them for new potential hires. Facebook pages, posting. But what we have a lot of success with, apart from the posting on the hiring sites, is personal networks, employee referrals. Again, just always talking. A lot of these things have to do with networking. Our latest hire was a family friend's tennis buddy's kid, went to school for a couple years, sharp young kid, but school wasn't for him, wanted to be more active, and he's starting May 5th with us. And I think some of those are the best options when you're looking for a candidate. Also, when you're on a hiring site, you potentially have people applying that are unemployed. They may not make for the best employee, so you can look for people you meet at a restaurant, a car wash, or you're at Ace Hardware, or your local hardware store, and you're talking to a really engaging person that's friendly and has good customer service skills. You can teach them how to be a pool tech, but those skills are hard to find. And maybe you can offer them more money than they're currently making in retail, or maybe you offer them a job that fits their lifestyle, some more independence. They're outside. Those are just the conversations you have to start engaging in, and that's my goal for this year, is to meet people that could potentially make good pool technicians and engage with them.
We have a pro out of Arizona that loves to recruit people from Chick-fil-A. He finds really solid employees because their hiring process is pretty stringent. I think you said yours was in and out. You found some.
Yeah, we used to stay away from the fast food or retail workers. We thought we need to hire people that had some trade experience or used to work outside. But we found that the customer service skills taught in a business like Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out or some of those corporations that have great company cultures, they make great employees.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about interviewing candidates. In the HR world, there's a whole psychology around the questions that you ask and how to evaluate those responses. And so in the scenario where you're hiring, for a full service company, a blend might be the way to go. If you're thinking about behavioral questions, these are going to be things that ask someone about past experiences. And that's actually going to hit a different part of your brain than a situational question, which is more of a what would you do if, giving someone a hypothetical, realistic job-related scenario. When you're hiring for pool skills, if you're hiring someone who has experience, you can confirm that they're being accurate by maybe showing them a picture of a backyard and say, this is what you walk up on. What do you do? What equipment do you need? Or have them run a chemistry test. So there's different ways to kind of gauge these in an interview. Keeping score of these and keeping these on file is a good way to have kind of a source pool of potential candidates. And also when you're out about, one of the things that, Kyle, you like to do is do ride-alongs, right?
Absolutely. We can usually tell, and I'm sure you can agree, most of you could agree to this. When someone walks in the door for their interview, you can tell within the first 3 to 5 minutes whether you're going to hire them or not. It's just, do they smile? Are they friendly? Are they charismatic? Can you tell they have these kind of soft skills that are absolutely necessary in doing pool service work? Um, if they come off cocky or rude or short answers or can't look you in the eye, that's a no right away, and we usher them out. So once they get past that, we like to hire quick and also fire quick. I know most people say hire slow, fire fast. We get guys on board pretty quickly, but we set the expectation that, hey, you're going to have a 90-day trial period. Whether it's not a fit for you, let us know. Sooner the better, right? Because those costs keep adding up. What we hate is we go through that 90-day and then someone quits. That's the most expensive tech we've had there, because they really haven't learned the trade until, I think, that 90-day period. And then vice versa, we just give a lot of feedback, and it's essentially a 3-week ride along while they're training, where we're still essentially on an interview process. And then the other thing, like Niki mentioned there, I just wanted to reiterate, we hired a person this winter that was another pool service company's sloppy seconds. They gave us all their they did a campaign. They had a list of 6 people. They hired one. They gave us the leftover 5. So do that and keep a database of people you've met. We advertise enough with job postings. People will come into our shop looking for a job. We often don't have a position when that happens, but we record their information and we reach out to them later. And that's free, compared to paying for Indeed ads and things.
So once you get through that process and you found a candidate, one really good way to kind of set expectations up front is to have a really good job description and offer letter. And this is a resource that we are borrowing once again from our one of our previous webinars from 0 to 1,000 Pools. But basically, your job description offer letter should be able to set good expectations up front and at least give them just the high level important information that they need to know. So your start date, your employment type, your salary, pay time off details, company holidays. This one covers technology, company vehicle policies, equipment and chemicals. And by the way, you don't have to screenshot this, folks. We're going to email this to you after the presentation, just in case. How the policies around major equipment, like if your riptide breaks, here's what you do. And then you have them sign, you sign, and then you collect their employee details here, including a contact for emergencies. And this is a really good way to just make sure that you're, again, conveying the important things up front and gaining agreement on those as you begin to think about the onboarding process. So speaking of onboarding, how do you do it, Kyle?
There's a lot of work to be done, especially running a business in California. There's a lot of paperwork, forms, keys, phones, truck policies, uniform. The list goes on and on. And there's work before the first day of the new hire. There's work on the first day. There's work afterwards. And we keep track of all of that with an SOP, so standard operating procedure. I highly recommend in every role that you're doing as a business owner, your goal should be someday to pass that on to someone else. And the way you do that is by recording what needs to be done and what you do. And then as things change in that process, you edit. Just this morning, an HR firm we work with told us that there's a new form we need to have our new hire signed. So we're going to add it to this form. So that's super important. But what we found is, a few years ago, we used to hire a tech and throw them on a ride along right away. Fill out a couple pieces of paperwork and hop in a truck. What we found is they missed kind of being adopted into our company culture and understanding our practices. So the offer letter has some basics to it. And then there's the employee handbook, which is super thick and no one reads and sits on the shelf. But we found that we've made like a middle ground with a new hire orientation. And when I can personally, I spend two hours with the new service tech hires, and I walk them through what it's like to work for Nevergreen Pools. So that's whether that's company values, goals, mission statement, how paid time off is accrued, when you can use it. Most importantly, I have them all take out their personal cell phones and take a picture of their manager's cell phone, my cell phone, and to explain to them what happens if you wake up and you're sick and you can't come into work. And we explain how important showing up is and what happens if you don't call and you don't come to work. All those things are in the handbook, but no one's reading the handbook. So we found that no one was really knowing our important policies. So we spend the time to go through that. We publish a holiday calendar because I'm sure, as you guys know, you're always moving. If you take the week of Christmas off, you can't take New Year's Day off because now you've just missed that pool for a few weeks in a row. So all of that is distilled down into a summarized handbook, and we talk it through one-on-one. And I try to make it a conversation and then onboard this employee into the culture. And then we have a list of trainings we need them to hit. Here's a list of ours. And I see Tommy saying one of the biggest challenges is having a training program that instills your quality of service into a new hire. That's a challenge for us as well. We're constantly reworking our internal training manual. But you'll see here, there's a number of different things we need to do: sexual harassment, workplace violence, safety training is something I like to do with the techs personally as well. And I like to really emphasize the importance of secondary containment, and that we're working with some chemicals that can hurt you. Use your PPE. I go over all that. We go over first aid kits. And I think that sets the stage, like, oh, wow, safety is important to this company. And the reason safety is important to all business owners is because if you're not safe and accidents happen, your costs go up to a point where you might even run you out of business. So all the large companies that I'm saying outside of our industry, safety is a paramount mission statement for them, and it should be for all of us as well. And we want to keep these employees safe and not beat around the bush the hazards that we have working with the certain chemicals we have.
And Kyle, you also put together a binder with standard operating procedures for various tasks. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so part of this information, we have everything printed out for the employee to have in terms of, what to, like I said, what to do if they need to call in sick, how the cell phones to be treated, how the trucks to be treated. But then we also go, and when we go into some more of the technical training, which is that 3 to 4 week on the job, we print out plumbing diagrams. We print out how to troubleshoot different salt cells. We print out the salt levels for each of the manufacturer's salt cell. So we print out all these like little how-to guides, even how to fill out a small parts work order, which is the way we install a small part on a customer's pool. So we have all these things printed out. So if they're ever out there and they forget, they can always reference this. But the challenge is, and I'm sure a lot of you would echo this, is to getting a technician to take the time to digest that information. They typically learn better, in person with a technician.
You want to briefly tell folks what's
Yeah,
in your 60-page employee handbook?
Yeah, so handbooks are important. It's a necessity. Our last pro tip there that we should definitely mention is I highly encourage everybody to engage with some sort of fractional HR service where they can help support you through all the nitty-gritties here. It could get very bogged down in legalese. We personally use a PEO, a professional employment organization, where we actually get great rates on benefits and workman's comp. They handle our payroll. They do our payroll taxes. Most of you are probably used to using some service for your payroll. I've never met anybody that did payroll and figured out their own withholdings and taxes there. So with that, they'll help guide you through an employee handbook because it probably needs to be specific to you and your situation. But we do have one as a starting point. I know when I first started out and had my first hire, I made up a handbook on my own, and it was very short. But as you grow, and really from day one, you should have something more formal that's vetted from a professional for your circumstance.
And we do have questions coming in. In the interest of time, we'll save those for the end here because we have a lot more to cover, but keep them coming. All right, let's talk about retention and productivity. And let's think about why employees quit. There are a number of reasons why employees might quit outside of, a move or some other thing that takes them, to a different place. And when people keep surveyed employees, this is what they came back with. For a lot of folks, they are going to leave if they don't feel like they're growing or their career's developing, if they're not engaged, if the company culture isn't great, or if it's toxic, if the employees and the benefits and the compensation don't line up. There are a lot of franchises coming into pool service. There are a lot of larger companies that have kind of centralized operations that are really, really tight on being able to offer benefits and good compensation. Sometimes there's disagreements with coworkers or management or, bad attitudes between folks. Sometimes there's no clear business goals or direction. And sometimes employees feel like their employees aren't listening to them, or if they are listening, that they're not doing anything about whatever it is that they have an issue with. And so when you think about retaining employees, it's very, very helpful, I think, to make sure that you are communicating with those employees and figuring out where they're at and making sure that you have a good sort of open door communication policy and a process and a mechanism for being able to make sure that your managers and people on your team are soliciting that feedback as well. One of the things that I think is probably fairly common in our industry is what Casey Graham calls the hologram carrot, which is, hey, come work for me. At some point I'm going to need a service manager, or come work for me. We're going to start you here, and in a few months, depending on how you do, we'll give you more money. That's a hologram carrot. And the reason why that's a hologram carrot is because you're chasing something that's not real. The best way to be able to make sure that your employees feel valued and that they're growing and that their careers are developing is to give them a path on what the future might look like. So one of the resources that we'll share came from that From Zero to 1,000 Pools webinar with Casey, but it is a tech levels and advancement path. You're going to come in as a level 1 tech. Here's all the things that you're expected to know as a level 1 tech. If you want to be on a level 2, here are all the things that you need to do. Maybe you have to get a CPO license. Maybe you have to be able to do, a filter replacement or a swap. Maybe there's other tasks that you need to learn to be able to get to a point where you're at that next level and you're making more money. It's very important when you're thinking about your employees to figure out what drives them. For some people, it's going to be money. They're going to work overtime. They're going to work. These are the people that are just going to show up and cover shifts and do whatever it takes to make more money. Then you're going to have people who value freedom and their personal time, who are not going to be the kind of people that are going to want to work late or pick up, an extra day or extra routes. And then they have people that really care about advancement. These are people who love the trade, want to know more about the trade, want to become experts and masters of their craft. And these are great employees to have. And you may have some that are a mix of these, but keep in mind that people typically will quit managers, not companies. And it's your job as a pool business owner to make the time to be a leader. And Kyle, you said you made an important shift here. Tell us about that shift.
Yeah, I encourage my managers that are people leaders, which I'm assuming everybody on here is a people leader or planning to be one. Many people come from a culture where the boss cracked the whip and drove the pool techs to do the job. But we flip that on its head. I want my service technician manager to serve the service techs. He's there to support them. And where I see a shift in that is the employees then feel like they're the star of the show and they're being served. They're being asked what they want. And all too often we treat our service techs, we can and we have the opposite. And that's not a way to keep techs engaged and employed. There's two things that are personal to the service technician, whereas everything's all about the business. There's two things that are personal, and that's their pay and maybe benefits, and then also reviews, dedicated time where you're talking about what they want and where they're doing things good or bad. And that's personal time, and that's sacred. You want to dedicate that time to the employee and have those conversations, because the conversations are about them, not the business.
So Kyle, one of the things that you're also really great at is KPIs, and you use KPIs to be able to manage your team and be able to make decisions that are sort of less subjective and more objective. Tell us about the KPIs that you use across your business and the ones that you use to manage your team in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And a KPI, so go back one. I was going to spend a little time here. So key performance indicators, you basically have a lot of data and you take that data to tell you what decisions to make. And with Skimmer, you have access to loads of data with all of your service route stops, your labor reports, your chemical usage reports. So we have hundreds of line items of data that we put some formulas to help educate our decisions, whether it's with hiring, firing, chemical costs. I mean, a very basic KPI is what's our pool count? Are we going up or down? So that's basically in a nutshell what a KPI is. If we go to the next slide, we kind of categorize some different ones here. Like we talked about, customer count, service or repair revenue, and splitting those up if you do service and repair, or maybe remodel or build, having those different income buckets and then their associated costs itemized out. And then profit per customer. Skimmer has reports on that. That's very important to know that. We never give a flat price increase across the board to all of our customers. The price increase is gauged based upon where that particular pool is from a profitability standpoint. And so a lot of the data that we pull, and the reason this slide is in here, is we use those KPIs to gauge how healthy and how our service team is performing. You see in this last, well, actually the second to last box, cancellations. And so we've adapted that over the years to reward our service techs that are retaining their customers. And then you see in the next slide, absenteeism. We reward our service techs that are showing up to work. And then we also keep track of our turnover, because that's where you have the really big cost. If you have a high turnover rate, meaning techs are coming and going all the time, that's when those costs of acquiring a tech, like Niki said, was $2,500 to $10,000 or $20,000. That's where you're paying that money and you're not getting anything on your return there. So we really monitor that turnover rate. And full disclosure, our turnover rate got too high about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and I put all my focus onto correcting that problem. That's probably why I'm sitting here today chatting about it, as I've spent a lot of time thinking about it recently. So we have a system of different meetings and reviews and check-ins. We used to do the classic, weekly meeting, bring in bagels or donuts. The problem is guys would come in at 6:45 in the morning. They're ready to leave on their route at 7. Some guys are trickling in at 7:15. So the meeting wouldn't really start after you grab a donut till like 7:30. Then it's 8 o'clock. That's a lot of payroll. The guys are half asleep. We ended that and we switched to a weekly informal one-on-one check-in. So we use a route stop on Skimmer for all the technicians, and it's their weekly check-in at the customer, which is our shop, and they meet it with their manager. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2 minutes, like, hey, how you doing? Doing good. Sometimes we'll impart some feedback. We use that as a dedicated time to do that. We'll share any changes. But the biggest thing is ask questions. Ask questions of your technicians. I think we forget, maybe they want to be a manager. Maybe they want to go into repairs. Maybe they want to do one of those things and that's just not their path. You need to honestly lay out a good path for them and explain why the path they want might not be the right path. But you got to do all of that in a soft, encouraging way, which can be a challenge for sure. And then we do a monthly meeting, but they're rather quick. We spend a lot of our time on our quarterly meetings. So with this, you're going to get my template that I use as a Canva PowerPoint type presentation. And it's a big pep rally, right? And so this is where we do a lot of our awards and compensation for those different contests we run for the service techs. And then annually, we have big holiday party. We share where we're at numbers wise with the company. We do Christmas bonuses. We have a really good time there. And then we focus on making sure we're doing a wage review annually for all the service techs. If someone's been with you for a year and they haven't had a wage increase, you might think they're at the top. It's worth giving them, at least that 5% increase annually. I think it's in good faith. Try to keep up with inflation. And I think that's really important. We could think, our pay range only goes up to X amount per hour. But if you've had a tech with you for 3 years, it's very, very valuable.
And Kyle, you do wage reviews at 90 days and at the year mark, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of our offer letter that you showed there, someone else's, but we do a similar thing. we will even lay that out in the offer letter where, hey, you're starting at X, you have no experience, and that's just, for us, that's kind of a non-negotiable. If you don't have experience, this is where you're starting. But if you have a good 90 days, here's where you can get at, and here are the things you need to do. So at 90 days, it's expected that you're going to have X wage if you hit these goals. And we get that in writing. And the most important thing is I've seen it, we'll tell a technician that, but it will not be recorded. And then we'll have the 90-day review, and the technician's like, oh no, you said you were going to give me a $2 an hour raise, not one. That's embarrassing, and it doesn't sit well for that employee. Remember, that's one of the two things that's personal to them, and you've just kind of, to their perspective, kind of shortchanged them. So definitely record and get in writing all the promises that you're making to your employees.
Tell us about your quarterly meetings.
Yeah, so this is like an idea of our cover slide. We grabbed some photos of the guys. We're always asking them for photos for social media posts and website and that sort of thing. And some of them are really into it and they enjoy doing it. Most of our group chat, which is another element of team building, but we have our group chat going. It's mostly, weird looking animals people are pulling out of skimmers, which is quite entertaining. Big tarantulas, and we had a lizard with a double tail, had two tails. So yeah, we get a lot of photos that way, and we share them here. And guys love seeing that. I got a projector for like $150 versus our tiny little TV that no one could see. Yeah, we have a good time. Set up the table, get the toaster rolling. I wish I was a better cook. I'd make like egg sandwiches on a Blackburn. That's my goal to get there. We're always trying to improve, but it's a time we announce new hires. We have two locations, so sometimes the other location doesn't know what's going on with the other. So we announce that. We announce all the birthdays or work anniversaries coming up, any promotions. We'll post that on the wall, so it's a reminder for everybody. It feels good when someone tells you happy birthday when it's your birthday, usually. And again, I said this was a pep rally. So this is fun. It's positive. We want the guys to be encouraged. We share any company wins. And we explain at a top level why these are wins for the company and why it's beneficial to you as an employee. And then we get into the awards, which is, we share some, new systems, is what's going on that's new, whether it's a marketing campaign or a different price from a different supplier. We share that as a win for the company. And I think our technicians understand, because we've built this in the culture, when the company grows and when the company has wins, that trickles down all throughout the company. Maybe we go from having bagels to having egg sandwiches on a Blackburn because we have the room to do that in our margin. So with the awards, these are things that at the quarterly meeting, we announce what the awards are for the next quarter, what the goals are. And again, what you're going to reward is the result you want to see. And then for the prior quarter is when we announce the awards. And what we do is we do gift cards for various lunch places, $25, and we spread them all out on the table, and it's fun, and then they get a pick. So we do a perfect attendance award. That's pretty self-explanatory, except this is to reward people that are only using their allotted PTO that they've accrued, their paid time off. So it does not reward using unpaid time. They get about a week and a half to 2 weeks a year of their own time off, separate from time off during the holidays. So there's really no reason to go beyond that. But of course, we all know how challenging it can be to have service techs show up every day to do their route. So we reward that. We do a small parts work order. And this is to encourage the technicians to give the level of service that we're selling to our customer. That's when your cleaner bag is broken, we have one stocked and we'll be replacing it. And it's also to encourage the technicians to fill out the work order correctly in Skimmer. And to get the KPI for that, it's very easy to filter on finished work orders for a particular time period and filter for that work order you're looking for. And you can do a Control F on the computer, type in the name of the work order, and it'll give you a number. Let's say it gives you 105. If you have 105 searches, one of those is the title. So you have 104 of those work orders. Then you could break it down by tech, copy and paste it into a spreadsheet maybe, and announce the winners. We also keep track of like our all-time most small part work orders done in a quarter by a technician. He's really proud of that. So that's fun. We do a most efficient technician award. And what's interesting here is kind of unique. I don't know anybody else is quite doing this, but we essentially take the hours that a technician is clocked on the time tracking app that we use and how many hours billed in Skimmer. So using the labor cost, whatever your labor cost is, it's associated with, a fraction of an hour, right? And we do a ratio of those two. And our company average is usually somewhere between 60% and 70%. So we share the company average. We share the top three, but not what their percentages are. And then we tell all the techs during your weekly check-in, get with your manager and learn your percentage. And it's amazing. They come back from their route and they're so excited. Oh, what's my number? What's my number? They want to know if they're improving or how they're doing to the company average. So that's super exciting because we're basically encouraging and rewarding techs to be more efficient and do more billable hours as if they were, attorneys or something that's paid by billable hours. And then we have Google reviews. That's a new one for this quarter for us. Our Google reviews kind of got stagnant, so we rewarded them to get them. We got them the dot cards. They tap that with the customer's phone, and we see that come through. We know who it was, and they get a mark on the board. We have these giant dry erase boards we got from Lowe's. They're about $20 each, and I think they're 6 feet by 4 feet. Nail them up on the wall, make a chart for all the text names, the contest, and then we just tally it. And it's old school. We're super techie, but that we see that big visual display can be the easiest way to motivate techs and keep track of it. Customer retention. I've always struggled with that one. I would actually love to hear some people's ideas how they reward and keep track of this. But essentially, we keep track of if we ever lose a customer due to a tech's quality of service, they get a black X. And at the end of the period, we reward people that had 100% retention. And of course, that's using the carrot instead of the stick. And then our Golden Broken Skimmer Lid Award. This is something that Eric Knight told me about that a pool company in Montana was doing. But essentially, the awards passed from tech to tech, from month to month. And it's when someone did something stupid, made a mistake, stepped on a skimmer lid and cracked it. But then more importantly, what they did to move forward and make it right. And we've had some really good dialogue in our meetings on that. And then the technician that's currently holding the Broken Skimmer Award, they pass it on. They select the winner and pass it on. And these guys got a golden chain, plastic chain, and zip tied it to so now it's like they got the Flavor Flav thing going on when they're cruising around in their truck. So it's just kind of fun and seems silly, but these are the things that are helping us increase our retention rates and lower that turnover.
And Kyle, you had an example with the manifolds being left off.
Yeah, so exactly. So it's this ongoing training. We've brought in reps, we've done trainings, we have automation panels set up where we do the ongoing training. But what's really cool is I think a lot of times some of the tech, especially the newer ones, just kind of tune that out. But in this dialogue, they're actually training each other, which is really cool to see. And the scenario Niki's talking about is someone said, hey, 4 times last week, I buttoned up a cartridge filter tank and turned to leave and saw the top manifold sitting there. So they had to undo it, put the top, wasted 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes for me, I'm slow. And so someone was like, hey, I just put the top manifold in the bottom of the filter tank. So when I go to put the cartridges back in, I see it and I don't forget about it. Genius. Now we all know that. We've shared that info. And it came from another tech. So I think it was better received and adopted by the team. So yeah, the Broken Golden Skimmer, it was fun breaking that and finding some gold spray paint too. And we do 2 of those, one for each shop. A lot of the contests are shared, but that's one for each shop.
Kyle, you also shared you bought batteries for your riptides. Tell us about that.
Yeah, some days the guys are a little sleepy and they're not as engaged to share, so I'll try to share. And I think I did this, yeah. And essentially we had the wrong batteries for our riptides for a while, and the guys were struggling with running out of juice like halfway through the day. We switched to lithium batteries and had the wrong size. And so I shared that was a mistake and cost the company $8,000 to replace these batteries. And then the good news to you is we're taking care of you guys. We hear you, we hear your struggles, and now you have batteries that'll last all day. And so that kind of shares sharing a mistake and what we did to fix it. It shares the investment that we put into the company. And then it also shows that, yeah, we care about the techs and we're listening to their feedback. The last thing here is we share a real broad top level financials from the previous quarter and year to date for the guys. So my guys know what a cost of goods sold is. They know the percentage range of where we need to be. They know where our expenses at. They know where our profit percentage is at. And I re-educate every quarter what those numbers mean and where we need to be. And I think this is twofold. For one, they become a part of this bigger, exciting mission, like Niki had said earlier, and they're not just lost in their own little corner cleaning their pools and wondering, oh, I could maybe do this on my own. They understand they're part of a bigger goal, and we share that with the finances. I think second fold is I have never had concerns of people leaving me and taking customers. I know that came up recently on Facebook commenting on an advertisement for this webinar. The idea is to create a culture and create a company that is much bigger than any one pole operator. And that was my goal, not from day one, but that was my goal once I reached max capacity as a single poler. And if you're in this webinar and you're interested about hiring, make that your goal. Create something that's bigger than yourself, and you won't have any concerns about people leaving. And on the flip side, our customers would not be interested in engaging with a one-off pool person that left a company because they're just not going to get the support and the level of quality that we're able to offer. And so you should all understand that as well.
All right, let's move into scaling and planning. And we do have a lot of questions, so we'll try to get to this section quickly so that we can tackle some of this Q&A. Kyle, you just talked about scaling beyond a single pole. And I know that we know from our data and our research that scaling from 1 to 4 employees is really, really difficult. So tell us how you did it.
Yeah, so I basically used a leapfrog technique. So I had a full-time job, and I was servicing 12 pools. So I waited till those 12 pools grew to sustain my lifestyle. And that's where I talk about bringing the boat close enough to the dock. That's a Dave Ramsey term. So bring the boat close enough to the dock before you make the jump and quit your job. Same thing when you're going to hire your first employee. You're going to be working your tail off, and you're going to be servicing 100 plus pools a day. You're going to be at your wit's end. It's going to be hard on your family. That's just the nature of building something like this. And then you make your hire. And then when you do that, you should have it already factored in your prices, labor and profit. If you're a single poler and you're just thinking all the profit is what you're making, you're forgetting there's a labor element in there too. If you're a single poler, you should have labor costs and profit. If you don't have the room in your pricing model to scale and to hire someone. You don't have a profitable business. You have a job. So you need to set that up. And then you keep leapfrogging. Then for the second hire, you're doing 50 pools initially. Then now you're doing 100 again. Your employee's doing 100. You get to 125. You hire your second employee. You train them up. And what's really challenging here is probably the 300 to 500 pool mark. Again, I'm in Northern California. Those numbers are probably lower in Texas, lower in maybe the Northeast. When you're at that kind of number, you forget that you need to serve your technicians and give them the support because you're most likely in the repair van and have a full day, got to do the accounting, got to manage the business. That's the most challenging level of scaling for me. And that's probably around, once you're past maybe 5 to 8, 7 technicians. But once you get past that, you can hire some help. You can hire a service technician manager that's just focused on your guys because that's so important to have that.
Kyle, we have a question. Actually, when you're planning for seasonality, there's a question that said, where are you located? Do you keep your staff all year round? And what is your advice for seasonal pool staffing?
I cannot really speak on seasonal. We are year round here in Northern California. We don't winterize pools. We do have a few people that quit in the winter and then, maybe try to come back in the spring and their pool's green and we got to take care of that. But for the most part, it's year round. For seasonal, I would say try to keep your employees, try to offer maybe Christmas light installations, which I can actually talk about a little bit offline because we just started that for our repair team. And then, snow removal. I think you want to keep your employees. That could be a real challenge having to rehire your team or hoping they come back.
Thanks for that. There are some questions about managers and how you set
Mm,
yourself up with a management structure. So
yeah.
let's talk
So,
about that.
so again, as you're leapfrogging, this will look different. This is our current couple months old setup. And what we started to do is we kind of had like territory managers, and that fell flat on its face because we had one person doing estimates for pool service, handling customer service needs, handling new sales inquiries, handling the technicians. They were trying to do it all for a certain sector, and it just didn't work. So this is our most recent model, and we are set up to go to the moon here with this. We have a full-time salesperson. Um, that is nurturing the leads, closing the leads, and getting them scheduled. And then we have our service manager where he is solely focused on serving his technicians. And with that, he's also managing the fleet and the inventory chemicals for the guys. But he's already at max capacity here. So I'm already getting my wheels turning. Like, how do I get some of those operation things off his plate? And then our repair manager has 2 repair technicians, and again, solely focused on handling the repairs. And then the customer service manager and 2 customer service reps, they're on the phones from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. handling new lead inquiries and getting those over to sales or handling current customer concerns. And again, I said we had some trouble with employee retention. Along with that, we had a little too high a churn. Our churn rates last summer were up to 2%. We lost a lot of customers, and part of because of the retention, and part of because we didn't have this structure in place. And so with that, I tasked and incentivizing that customer service team to get that retention rate back down to like 1%. And that would just be like people moving out, people that they're leaving for reasons other than the quality of our service or communication.
Let's talk about your N1 scaling plan, and then we'll go to Q&A because we have quite a few questions here.
Yeah, I'll summarize this quickly, but essentially N is the number of technicians you need, and so you should always have N plus 1. That becomes more important when you're moving in the spring and summer months, or if your existing service technicians are not A players, this is more important. You never want to have a service technician you need after multiple coaching attempts, you need to let go, but he's stuck there because you don't have an alternative, you don't have an out. And this N plus 1 model helps you control the quality of your service by having good technicians at the ready. Of course, this comes at a cost. That should be factored into your labor cost on every quote you bid.
What lessons have you learned in all of this, Kyle?
There's a lot of lessons here. We covered most of them, a lot of them. Yep. So that first one, we've had to stop advertising, stop growth because we lost the tech. Having techs in the ready, and you should know, like this time of year for us, we need a couple extra techs because otherwise we can't grow. We've overloaded our service technicians. Then they can't handle green to clean, startups, filter cleans. They can't handle the extras. We find that most of our techs in their age range, I think our average tech, is in their kind of younger 20s. They're okay with working 30 to 40 hours. Some want the overtime and they can get it, but if they're always getting the 40, 45 hours a week, they leave. So we've reduced their pool count. We found a sweet spot of 70 to 80 pools a week for a technician. Once we get up to that 80, we reshuffle and bring them back down, but they can always get their hours. There's always filter cleans or cleanups or some jobs. Don't be afraid to change your org structure. Some of those conversations were hard conversations when I changed things around. People were in different positions, and we needed to move that. But it's for the best in the long run. Yep, don't let firing be a surprise. You want to have feedback. You want to have it documented. You want to have personnel folders. For here, we have the EDD, so it's the employment department here in California. They will call you up and ask questions, and there will be trials, and you'll need to state your case. And if you don't have documentation, you will lose. Yep, don't shoot from the hip, know your numbers. That's kind of my specialty, is knowing the data and making decisions from it. Maximizing revenue per employee, that would be with the filter cleanings and any kind of specialty chemical fees and annual maintenances on different pieces of equipment. Watch chemical usage, run those reports by technician to see if there's any issues, any overdosing. It's very easy to overdose chlorine, and it just burns off in the atmosphere. So watch that. We talked about the pool count per tech. You should know that and plan ahead for when you hit that. Otherwise, you can't grow. Leveraging technology. We actually switched over to Skimmer billing last fall. And the way in our reorg, we were actually able to eliminate an admin position. If you notice in that org chart, there was no admin or office staff. It's now in the hands of the customer service team because it's all in Skimmer. Everything is card on file. We need that before we go out to your house, all on auto pay. So we've basically eliminated 40 hours a week, and now it's maybe just an hour or two a week of maintenance with the customer service team, including month end. Yep, credit cards on file, absolutely worth it. You might not want to pay the fees, but I'll gladly pay the fees because we have 50 customers grandfathered in that are still on check. The time it takes to go to the post office, open the envelopes, record the checks, make the deposit on the back end, go to the bank. Although I like that, I go on Fridays, they have cookies. It's a lot of work. And for me at scale, it's worth the X%, in credit card fees.
Great lessons there. Very quickly before we get into Q&A, and by the way, Kyle has graciously offered to stick around for a little bit of extra time during Q&A. So if you would like to stick around, you are more than welcome to. All the resources that we talked about today and a couple that we didn't go into very deeply will be sent to you today, probably this evening, with the recording and the slides from this presentation. So if you are looking for these resources, these are all things. It's a Google Force copy. So you just click on the link and it'll force a copy, and you can edit that to your heart's content and put your own company name in or edit to suit your needs. And thank you, Kyle, for sharing your handbook and all of the wonderful resources. Just that handbook alone. I know you're in California and rules are quite stringent there when it comes to employment, but it is quite a document and probably very useful. Probably save y'all hundreds, if not $1,000 on having to work with someone to create that if you just want to recycle and use that for your own company. Also, we mentioned this before, Kyle also does coaching. So if you need help with your metrics, if you need help getting your QuickBooks reporting set up, if you want advice on how best to handle billing through Skimmer or setting up work orders, Kyle does offer that as on a consultative basis, and you can just simply email him there at the email address you see there, and he will get in touch with you. So Q&A, we're going to try to rapid fire these because we have quite a few. Kyle, do your safety protocols also include best practices on what to do during bad weather or cold weather, such as we do not service pools when it's raining outside or below 40 degrees?
We have SOP on that, and the technicians learn that. It's in their binder. We use on every route stop, we have a checklist item that's storm visit, and it tells the customer, hey, it's storming out here. We'll be back next week to finish cleaning up. The technicians know when to do that, and we've set parameters around that, whether it's lightning, a certain temperature, can't see the bottom of the pool, those sorts of things.
Great. How did you come up with your training? Was it through trial and error, and who does the training?
So when you talk about training, so we have different trainings. I'm assuming you're talking about the 3 to 4 week, on the job, like technical training. That I can talk about in a second, but all the other trainings, the PEO firm we work with says, hey, you need to have your people sign off on the sexual harassment training. So that's where that's come from. And then we use that SOP document that we're sharing to collate it also. We hit them all. We love Orinda water chemistry, so we have all of our technicians sit through that. One area we've learned there is we used to have the guys do that like right away, but I think it was just in one ear, out the other. So now we have them out with a trainer for the first week, and then we sit down and do the Orinda method. We've used CPO before. We've actually moved away from that because we don't do any commercial, and we feel like the Orinda and our in-house training is adequate.
So it has been trial and error, correct?
Absolutely. And then I would just say have a whiteboard and just start throwing all your ideas. Like the techs need to know this, the techs need to know that, and then start organizing that in category, and then you just start fleshing it out. And that's what we call a winter project. We always have a lot of winter projects, but start collating your ideas now And then in the winter when it's slow, put that together.
Great response. You mentioned bonus structures for employees who show up. Can you elaborate on that?
So what that is those quarterly contests and the rewards and recognition and the gift cards.
And what are the gift card amounts and what do you typically do there?
It's $25 for, so they can grab lunch.
Awesome. Robert asked, do you have a pre-filled work order for the meetings in Skimmer? And I think he's talking about the manager check-ins, checklist, notes for each tech, as well. Is this needed? Is this
Mm,
as well
good
as
question.
to be confidential, or can all techs and managers see that?
That's a really good question. We do not have those notes in Skimmer. I have seen some HR related information in Skimmer and years ago, and we put an end to that right away. We use Google Forms. We're set up on Google Workforce. That's where our emails are and Google Drive and all that. We use a form, and it's called Employee Interaction Form, and that uploads to a spreadsheet where managers, you can give access to who you want to have that. We can filter by technician, and then we see the history of weekly check-in. Here's what was said, weekly check-in, quarterly review, a write-up, annual wage, and so we can kind of track all that. And then on the back end, we have a personnel folder that has restricted access that has all the scanned in copies of the reviews and the wage performance reports and all that.
That's a best practice too, to make sure that that confidential information stays confidential. Uh, Drew asked, do you have set skills for weekly techs and equipment techs that are written out? The employees talk, and when one finds out another makes more, it can cause major issues.
Yeah, so there's been a big movement to have transparency in pay, and we're very aware of that. We often will matrix it out and see where people are at, because yeah, people do talk and they should know, and people leave pieces of paper where they shouldn't. Um, and even if you do have that spliced out, what managers make and what technicians make, and not everybody knows if there's any, bonuses or commission and that whole sort of thing. So long and short of it is you should be prepared for people to talk, and your pay should be equitable based upon the people's quality of work and level of experience and job description.
Great. Uh, Eric asks, so what batteries do you use for your Riptides?
It's batteries plus like house brand called like X or something like that. Yeah, we're having some warranty issues, but they're being really helpful and they're stocking them and we're just kind of rotating them through. The big old honking lithium batteries. Lightweight though, and 10-year warranty. So
10-year warranty?
yeah, yep. They're
That's
quite expensive, but over 10 years it should pay off.
nice. Chancey asks, can you give me more details about what you do in that first 90 days? When are they in a truck on their own for the first time generally?
Mm. So they got to hit the different parameters. Like they need to be able to, the Taylor test kit, they got to know how to test water. They got to know how to use their RINDA calculator and balance the pool to LSI. They got to know how to use the sanitizer. Then they got to know how to use Skimmer and do the different handful of different work orders they do. Um, and so some techs are really quick to that, and they could be like the trainer's like he's ready to go after 2 weeks. But the really sharp folks, it's about 3 weeks and 4 weeks for the rest. And so they're needing to do all the things, but we'll have a tech service a pool with our systems and checklists and program in place as quickly as after 3 weeks of ride along trainings.
Great. Uh, Cole's asking a question that you and I purposefully did not cover here, but I'm gonna take a stab at this one. So Cole says,
Mm.
I'm seeing a lot of ads for independent 1099 pool tech contractors. What is your opinion on W-2 versus contractors? Kyle and I discussed this at length, and Kyle only hires employees.
Yeah, my opinion is I do not believe with this ABC rule that if you're a company that offers pool service, you cannot subcontract someone to do the pool service. So we're strictly W-2.
And I will say that's pretty consistent. There is an IRS test that you can take to make a determination whether your employee is a W-2 or a contractor. And I would say if you have any questions about that, to consult an employment attorney.
Or one of these HR advisors or PEO firms.
Great. Sabrina, what does your N+1 tech do when there isn't a route to fill?
sweep the shop would be worst case scenario. Um, but they can continue training. They can have a longer training period. They can do, we have a flexible role in our repair department. So if filter cleanings are a great way, so he could do less filter cleanings and that N+1 could do more filter cleanings. They're
I
not spending a lot of time cleaning the shop.
Chantel, who's on the webinar, she has extra or more experienced techs move to kind of quality control positions. So she'll do work orders to get a quality check after a tech has serviced a pool and make sure that everything was done to satisfaction. And so that's how she leverages that extra time, is to make sure that that other folks are doing a good job and providing corrective feedback when necessary.
And that's what's great about the N+1 is you can have that new person do extra things, or you could take your more experienced person and do some higher level things.
Richard is asking, do you immediately request for ACH auto pay before you give a quote?
Um, although the ACH is there's less fees associated with that, we collect the credit card before we go out and do the work through a third party that we can get the credit card, and then we enter that into Skimmer. It's a PCI compliant system. So if someone wants to pay the ACH, we got to invoice them beforehand or get the invoice, or there's some case by case situations, but in general, we're taking the hit on the credit card fees because it's such an easy way and a quick way to move money.
Yeah, a lot of times with ACH, if your customer has never used Stripe or whoever your payment gateway is, a lot of times they'll have to go through a micro deposit verification step, which can tack on quite a long period before you actually get paid. We have seen quite a few customers just making it part of their service agreement. Before we start service, we require a card on file, and very, very few have come back. Even folks that said, I have customers, they're never going to do it. Yes, you may have some that are never going to do it. But especially for late payers, I think, Kyle, you were one of the first folks that we talked to that said, I had 30 chronic late payers and I mandated to get on auto pay, and 27 did right out the gate, or whatever the number was. It is a better way of doing business. And with Skimmer, we offer next day payouts now, next business day, with credit card payments. So it's a good way to make sure that you have healthy cash.
And just in case we didn't answer Richard's question fully, he was saying before we give a quote, before we give a free estimate for pool service, we don't charge for that. We don't request a credit card or anything. That would be before we go out and clean their pool on the first day. On the repair side, we do not give free estimates. There's a diagnostic visit, and for that we require a credit card on file.
Great. Tommy asks, what's your favorite productivity or project management tool, if you have one?
This is a trick question, Skimmer.
Good.
We use a marketing CRM, Go High Level, that's pretty robust, and we kind of jailbreak that and jailbreak Skimmer to handle those types of things. We don't build pools, so we don't need anything too robust.
Austin is asking, how do you deal with a worker that keeps breaking things even after being spoken to several times? That's a great question.
Yeah, I always tell my guys, you break something, you tell me, no big deal, we move on. If that happens the next week and the next week and the next week, you can't be working here. So that's pretty plain and simple.
Pretty direct too.
And they get written up. You got to document, even if it's one little fender bender or, riptide dropped off the truck, which has happened. You got to document it and be very clear. If this continues happening, you can't work here.
And along those lines, Curtis is asking, how much time do you expect the pool tech to spend at each stop?
Oh, I have some intensive thoughts on this. So we have basically two levels of pool service, really three. We have our partial, which is like a chem basket, just no pull or vacuuming. And then we have our partial plus, which is we add in a little brushing. And then we have our full service, which is soup to nuts. That pool is looking great. If you have an autofill, you don't have to do anything to your pool. We're vacuuming with the Riptide. We're netting the leaves, checking on the equipment, all that. And when the technician goes in the backyard and they see it's a partial or full, we put a number next to it, and that's a maximum time the technician is allowed to spend in that pool. And that correlates with how much labor we quoted to the customer. We don't say that to the customer because if it's a full 30, for example, and it's a shoulder season, right? It's February and the tech can be in and out in 15 minutes. the customer like, oh, I didn't get my 30 minutes. There's a little dust in the corner. So we need to gauge that correctly with the customers, but it's our way to tell the technician how much the customer's paying for in the service.
Great.
So, oh yeah, and so in general, like our partial service, they're partial 10s or partial 15s. In our full service, there's a full 20. And we got a full 60. It's like water park.
Uh, I don't know how to say this person's name, Naj, I'll say for short. How are you managing repairs, tracking sales versus cost?
That's a very good question. So what we do is when we pay our suppliers, we categorize that in QuickBooks as either service expense, chemicals, reagents, poles, or we're categorizing that as a repair expense, so like equipment and that sort of thing.
Kelsey
And
asks,
so then we also are recording our income in those two different buckets. So at a macro level, we can look at our percentages of our costs for each of those versus our revenue.
so it's about having the right classes and the right structure in QBO, right?
For expenses and your income, which is pushed over automatically from Skimmer. And then on a micro level, we have a master price sheet, which I've shared with a number of folks I've worked with that help you build out your gross profit margins, your costs. It automatically is pulling your costs in and then giving you a price that you're then uploading into Skimmer to be your price. And that's how you're managing it on a per job basis.
Great. Repetition, SOPs for the win. Kelsey asks, have you ever found that it is best to pay techs by the hour, by the day, by the pool, or other?
Kind of touching back on the 1099 deal, I think there's some challenges to pay a tech by the pool here in California. And then I also think that I've always thought that paying someone by the pool would encourage them to hustle and do a poor job. So we've always paid by the hour. But I've been researching some different performance pay structures, which we do with our repair team and our management team. I would like to pull that lever, but I haven't quite found. I need to keep it simple. I've had some incentive plans that have me, up till midnight before payroll trying to figure out all the numbers. So we've just stuck with by the hour, and then you can make more if you're more efficient, right? We record those efficiency numbers. And absolutely, the best techs are the most efficient techs.
Do you provide vehicles for techs, and how are chemicals handled while transporting to customers?
Yeah, we have all the vehicles here. Very few people take them home. No service techs. They're all in one of our two locations. They come in, they get the truck, they load it up with our chemicals that we have delivered here, stocked for them. And we actually just did a little CHP. The California Highway Patrol has they did a little class and they had a little brochure on how to handle the chemicals in the trucks. And so we're always working on being as compliant and as safe as we can. Also, Eric Knight was in the shop about a month ago. He gave us an A-, which is pretty good. I think if any of you guys have seen his training with Arinda, and he shows pictures of the back of the trucks and the issues, keeping the chlorine and the acid separated, keeping the secondary containment. We use those ratcheting cargo bars. We have 2 in each truck, bungee cords if we're ever going to double stack cases, so on and so forth.
And Eric has since moved over to Watershape University to lead that organization. And so you should definitely expect to have more coming from Eric around pool service and repair in particular.
Yeah, I think we're going to see his level of training for water chemistry into all aspects of service. Just my guess.
Do you use any training apps like Trainual, or can you recommend any, Kyle?
We do not. We basically use Google Drive and folders in there, and then also some videos that have links, in the drive.
Tony asked, we answered that one. Is it a fair practice to charge for diagnostics fees for your recurring clients?
I believe it is, yes, because I need to pay a very experienced technician to go to their backyard and see what's going on. If it's something our service tech can handle, or at least give it a first stab, that is absolutely included in their monthly rate. But not for and that's also what I've seen as a single poler doing free service calls and and things like that. That can be hard to scale if you're doing a lot of things for free, solar turn-ons. So we need to charge for all that because I know my numbers and what the service technician is doing in the backyard every week and the chemicals included in that is what the customer is paying for monthly, nothing more.
And what I've seen folks do, especially if it's like not a weekly service client, is just to say, hey, we do charge a whatever it is, $100, $125 service fee. However, if you choose us to do the repair, we'll credit that towards your repair, which is like a really good way to just make sure that you're, working with folks who are committed to getting that work done and not just wasting your time giving away free quotes. What payroll percentage are you targeting for service and repair techs?
That's a good question. I have that data and I track it, but um, I look at my cost of goods sold as all the materials and the chemicals and the labor, and that needs to be 50 to 60%. So my gross profit needs to be 50 to 40%. And the chemicals is much smaller than the labor.
Thank you for that. We have so many questions. We may not be able to get to all these. Let me just see here. What other?
I'm happy to hang out and talk shop.
Yeah. Are you on LinkedIn to connect?
I am not really on LinkedIn. I think there's an old profile there, but you hit me up on my email.
Or you're in the pool deck too, and our pool
I
deck,
am.
which is free even if you're not a customer. So thepooldeck.getskimmer.com. Um, you covered this kind of already, I think, but do you prefer to hire entry level instead of hiring people with experience?
We go back and forth. If someone has experience, we want to have a conversation about their water chemistry. That's the most important thing. And depending where they learned, we kind of know our competitors and who we'd want to have trained a tech or not.
I've heard pros and cons for both, for sure. Um, Chris is asking, at what point did you open the shop? What trucks did
Oh,
you have? That's a good question, actually.
yeah. So I was running out of the house. The neighbors kicked me out when I think I had 3 service trucks. And they're all out there finishing at the same time, music blast and all that. And then we got semi trucks to live in Chlorine, and I live in a neighborhood, so they kicked me out. They didn't tell me; they told like
The
the
HOA.
neighborhood, yeah, the neighborhood police people. And then it was tough finding a place. And I found a building that was way too big with a yard that was way too big. I wanted half of it. I couldn't get half of it. So I just went all in. I signed a 5-year lease to get the best rate. And this is a good technique. So 5-year lease, and they backloaded the rate. So now I'm in the last year of that lease and I pay the most. And it was really small monthly payments initially. And now I'm paying for that right now, but I have the revenue to support it. So the plan worked out. It was definitely a calculated risk. But at the time, the rent was 90% of my profit, my monthly profit. So it was a big investment in the business.
And I've been there. It's right off the highway with a big, beautiful sign that you can't miss. Unfortunately, you weren't there that day, Kyle,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I get to go by there. Uh, that is a great question. I know you have 2 locations now as well, and you've managed to scale that and still turn a profit. So kudos to you on that. How do you feel about outsourcing your customer service versus in-house? Great.
Great question. Yeah, we did that last year. We used the call service and we wrote up a script and a whole flow and it fell flat on its face. We did the press 1 for sales, press 2 for customer service. Well, everybody presses for sales. They just press the first thing. And even for leads, they want to kind of talk shop. They kind of want to understand what's going on a little bit. And this service we use just couldn't do that. They could only just follow their script. And we spent a lot of money at, whatever, $2 a minute. Our average call is 3 minutes. I mean, these people are on the phone for 10, 15 minutes. So it was rough. Another reason I love growing, because there's always this next level you want to hit where something like an in-house customer service team works.
And you've learned that the hard way, I think, but it sounds like you've got a pretty good recipe for it now.
Yes.
Uh, Ken is asking how he missed it. How many techs and pools do you have?
Yeah, so we have 14 routes currently, and we have 15 pool techs with 1 more on the way, 16 pool techs to plan for the growth and 2 more. And we're going to order 2 more trucks here next week.
Killing it,
So
crushing
we got
it.
the N+2 right now.
What do you do about business insurance?
Well, business insurance, there's a lot of insurance, but I have a great broker that does our auto insurance and a number of policies there. And then I have, through a trade association, the liability insurance and some insurances on the properties we rent. Because everybody you work for, like we do warranty work, all the manufacturers want a certificate of insurance. The land we rent behind our building, they need a certificate of insurance. I just send all those emails to the brokers and they give them what they want. I would never get liability insurance outside of a pool industry association. It's going to just be like through the roof. Workers' comp is through that PEO, and my rates are really good compared to my colleagues.
Scott is asking, do you use QuickBooks in conjunction with Skimmer? If so, what elements do you use in each?
I use QuickBooks absolutely. So the thing to remember is QuickBooks can do more, but QuickBooks is really just, it keeps track of your books, what you're spending and what you're making. That's all we use it for. Um, all of our, then you have payment processing, which QuickBooks can do, but we do that through Skimmer. And all of your invoices and payments, we do all of that through Skimmer. QuickBooks is just on the back end recording it, so I can have a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement whenever I want to.
How much time do you think you've saved in being moving from billing out of QBO into Skimmer billing?
Well, we eliminated a full-time position, so
That's huge.
$6,000 a month.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Robert said he would love to hear from a pool builder service maintenance company owner on how he uses Skimmer. Great feedback. Noted. We do have quite a few pool builders. Unfortunately, that is not something that Skimmer is very good at. We recommend JobTread. They have a very nice user interface, great support, amazing training. Their ethos is very similar to Skimmer's.
Interesting. Do I smell a future acquisition there?
I don't know if we can afford JobTread, but they're good friends of ours, and we send each other a lot of business back and forth. David is asking, do you pay the trainer more training the trainee, and is the trainee on reduced pay during training?
So the trainee has their starting rate, and then we've worked in, if you've hit certain goals at 90 days, you can make X. So essentially, yes, they're on a training wage. The trainer doesn't make any more, but our trainers are the most efficient techs. They have the highest level of understanding of the pool, and they don't scare our new people away. So they already inherently have a higher level of pay.
Great. Sarah's asking, how big of an area do you cover? We're trying to decide how big of an area to branch out to and how many more techs to hire. Good
Yeah,
question.
interesting. So if you're familiar with Sacramento, we have two highways that come up out of Sacramento to Lake Tahoe. We started on one stretch of highway with just two towns, then we went to three towns. Then we grew that area, and then we did an acquisition about 2 years ago on the other highway side where our second location is, and grew that. And then that allowed us to fill in the gap in between. So our area is quite large. It's basically everything east of Sacramento, kind of up into the foothills a little bit.
Uh, you're pretty spread out there too, right? Like,
Yeah, that can be spread out. There's some sparse areas, and then we focus our marketing on getting more efficient in those areas.
Jessica is asking, how do you handle a customer complaint on service for that day? Do you send the tech back, waive that week's cost, or send a field manager? Do you penalize a tech for repeat complaints?
Great question. We used to think we were the bee's knees and customers' expectations were too high, and we'd say, hey, that's what our service is. With growing at scale and knowing the technician, and the biggest change was knowing what our customer acquisition cost is. You should know what it costs you to get a new customer. So we spent, let's say, $400 on a new customer, right? With marketing spend, salesperson, onboarding time, kind of like those costs of hiring a new employee. But we didn't spend $1 on keeping a customer. So obviously there's irrational customers or people that are bad fit. We get rid of them quick and fast, usually within the first couple months of service. But with the customer that's like, I'm not satisfied with my service, we can see how long the tech, because of Skimmer, we can see how long the tech was in the pool. We can see what tech it was. And we have enough volume going on, we can hit them that same day or the next day, no charge, make them happy. If they're really disgruntled, we have gotten more in the habit of giving them a credit of a half month, full month of service. Because remember, the customer service goal is to get that churn rate from 2 to 1.
Well done. Seems like a great way of handling it. Do you charge a flat rate per pool or does it vary based on pool and location? You have
We
three pricing tiers, right?
Well, we have a quote writer that I'm happy to share with anybody that comes on, and we work together. But essentially, you're putting in the size of the pool, and you're putting in how much labor you're estimating the tech to be there, and it spits out the monthly rate. And then we charge an annual salt fee, March 1st, which covers all the salt for the pool and a salt cell cleaning, and keeping that thing up and running. And then we charge an annual specialty chemical fee, June 1st, covers all their specialty chemicals, the extra chemical charge usage in the summer, conditioner, stabilizer. This year we're putting Orinda's CV700 in all of our pools, and that fee pays for that. And it's equivalent to about a 13th month of service, so it's about a double service rate for June for our customers.
Seems like a good time to do it too, because it's gonna be the hardest time to find.
Yeah, yeah, I like doing it in June because it's maybe a little easier pill for the customers to swallow because they're enjoying their pool, but it's a little late because a lot of the costs have already happened by then.
Right. Uh, that was it. And the next question, do you charge extra for chemicals?
And that's the program we use.
Uh, Jeremy asked, is there a way to advance one's career as a pool cleaning tech, like different level for tech 1, 2, and 3 to encourage long-term employees to stay longer?
So every single person that's works for me, apart from, oh, I was looking, that was the right one. Yeah. I think, yeah, everyone that's worked for me started as a service technician. So those certain service technicians showed some type of aptitude to problem solve. They showed up, they were efficient, they understood the bigger picture. We earmark those techs and we ask them, what do you want to do? And those two paths are, the repair route or kind of the management route. And there's also like we have, lead techs and like you said, level 1, 2, 3. But it's a conversation, but essentially it's also a hard conversation when you have a technician that wants to be a leader but doesn't have the skills.
What is the average price per month where you service, Kyle?
Well, our average is 155 before those annual chemical fees. That's spread out for our 10-minute services to our full service.
And
And
also,
I would say we're middle to upper price range because of the value of the level of service we offer.
Austin, if you are curious about prices in your zip code, email me at Niki@getskimmer.com with your top 5 zip codes, and I'll be happy to send you those rates. Uh, Curtis is asking how you connect Skimmer to QBO using both. There is a way to connect from within the integrations tab on Skimmer. And if you need help with that, feel free to reach out to our support team and we'll be glad to help. Curtis is also asking how many of your pools are salt systems.
Couple hundred, so about 20%. We don't work with all that many builders. The new builds are a lot of the salt pools.
David is asking, this is a good question. What's been your best bang for the buck as far as marketing goes? Google, Facebook, etc.
Well, we've advertised on Google pay-per-click for a number of years, and that is definitely the best bang for the buck. We're getting more sophisticated in that area to actually understand really granular our cost per lead on each platform. But my advice there is hire an agency, at least in the beginning, until you understand it, because they're gonna not waste your money. I see it all the time in our market. Basically, there's 2 players that are on the top 3, and then there's a third one that comes in and out, and I'm afraid they're just wasting their money with Google. They don't have a proper campaign. Agencies can tell you how much money you need to even start there, and if you can't hit that threshold, Google's just gonna take your money.
Yeah, and as more people use Google, it gets more expensive. A lot of marketing agencies will cap how many customers they'll serve in an area.
Oh, interesting.
So they're not.
What I'm excited about is the future with the AI and the chat GPT, taking Google's lunch money and being first to market is important. We were first to market with the Google LSA, Google Guarantee, and our cost per lead is quite low there. And it's a pretty cool offering Google does. That's a little green check mark. It comes up before the ads, before the map.
Where you're
So
verified, the verified check,
yeah,
Google.
Google vets you. You need a contractor's license and whatnot.
Jessica has a really great question. We have about 600 pools. I'm curious what Riley, your service manager's responsibilities and duties are. We want to create that position.
So over the years, and as we scaled, there was another person that was a customer service. So I had one manager at one point. They did all the stuff. And then as you grow and scale, that person's about ready to pull their hair out. And then you hire someone else and you make a new job description, taking some off from your main manager. So it sounds like you need more of that kind of general, maybe he's called a service manager, but he does all the things. And then as he gets too busy, you bring in another person. So the question was, what about that role? What do they do?
Riley's?
Well, yeah, so I would say that first manager person, they're on the phones, they're dealing directly with your customers. They're the face and the name of your company. They're doing estimates. They're getting the guys out the door in the morning. Um, they're ordering chemicals. At one point, I had one manager that did all these things,
That's a lot.
except repair. Repair is always kind of because repair is the last thing. I was a repair tech, then I was a repair manager, right? But in terms of sales, customer service, managing the guys, that can be one manager. And then as you grow, you chunk a piece off. Just as I said with Riley G here, I want to chunk off his management of the fleet and inventory.
I bet Riley would appreciate that.
Especially right now, April 17th, and we've had a warm week, and yeah, it's busy. And I got to tell Robert to up his green to clean. We got too many green to clean, so it's like juice up that number a little bit, right? A little supply and demand pricing.
Nice, smart. Surge pricing like Uber.
Yeah.
Chancey's asking, in 7 years of business, what is the longevity of your employees and what is turnover like?
Great question. So as I mentioned, we had some trouble with that, but my managers have been with me for 4 years. So I think part of the strength there and part of their attraction is like I've been in the trenches with them. I've cleaned pools with them. I've repaired pumps. I've done that stuff with them. We've had company pool parties in my backyard. We have a close relationship, and then that I would hope would trickle down to the technicians. But of our technicians, the average is a year and a half. And we have a handful of guys that have been with us like 3-4 years. And we have some guys that have been in the pool service business for 10+ years.
You mentioned integrating Skimmer and Go High Level. Do you use a third-party integrator?
It's called customer service. There's a little extra data entry until Skimmer's got that set up for all of us, which will be great.
Yep. And full disclosure, we are working on our API stuff, and Go High Level is at the top of the list just because so many pros use it as a CRM. So stand by for that, and thank you for your patience. Curtis is asking, do you get pushback asking for customers to have a credit card on file? Because I spend a lot of time being a bill collector.
No, it's in your presentation. Even for these diagnosis visits, these people don't know us from Adam. They call us up from a Google ad, and we're like, we need a card on file to come out. They do it. Our other home service businesses are doing that. Yeah, you just have to have the mindset that this isn't a reach. This isn't unacceptable. This is the norm. And if you have that confidence, the customer will feel that and they'll give you the card.
Yeah, I think that a lot of folks, especially, folks who may be a little bit older are just, resistant to ask their customers to keep a card on file. But like literally any service you sign up for these days, you're going to put your credit card on file, whether it's, Netflix or,
Yeah.
a lot of the pest control companies do it now. It's just like, that's just part of it.
And furthermore, when that credit card doesn't work for Netflix, there's the date where your Netflix turns off. So
Right.
that should be carried over to our business as well.
What third party did you use for payment setup?
Oh yeah, it's called emailmeform.com.
Email me form.
I think it's one user is maybe like 50 or $60. You need the higher tier to have the PCI compliance.
Chancey's got some great questions today. Uh, did you do the Google LSI or LSA, I think they mean, with your home address?
So all of our Google stuff, so it all starts, Google LSA is based off your like my Google business profile, whatever that's called. And that is off of our shop's location. And we only have one. We just have the one, our first one. Kind of tricky to get the second one going. So all of our reviews are going to that location.
But I think when you set up your local service ads, you were already in your warehouse. Like you already had an office, right? It wasn't your house.
Yeah, but the Google LSA pulls from your My Google deal.
So it's wherever your My Google business location is.
Yeah, I don't think so. So what you can do there is you can be a service area and you don't need to list your house. You say your service areas, you give zip codes and it bases it off that. If you have a physical location, then you can use that.
I think we're almost wrapped up here. Curtis is asking, he said QBO charges a processing fee of 1%, and then adding skimmer fees, is it more costly to use both side by side? If you use Skimmer as your payment processor, you are not paying the QBO fees. So instead of paying QBO fees, you're paying those fees to Stripe, our payment processor. And you can use them side by side. So if when you process a payment inside of Skimmer, once that payment has been made, it syncs over to QBO, so that you can have, all your reports and expense tracking and everything else that you may want to do in QBO, or hand it off to your bookkeeper or accountant or what have you. You're
And
most
the rates are comparable.
They're super comparable, right? I think what I've heard from people who have adopted billing, and especially for those who've gotten people on auto pay, is just a much better experience. We have our customer portal now, which if they're using Skimmer Billing, all of their invoices, all of their past due invoices, managing their credit card payment, it's all self-service. So you literally give your customer an invitation to the customer portal and they can see all of their service history reports and all of their payment history as well.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it that skimmer billing is way more efficient than copying everything over to QuickBooks, whether you're using the reoccurring invoices or not. I mean, what we used to do in there with what our admin used to do is just nuts. But what is a lot of work and very scary, and it'll be more painful than you think, is the transition.
Right.
And I just went through that last fall. That's definitely something I can help folks with if we're working together.
And we can help too. We have an entire team of account managers, and their sole purpose is to help you with that transition. Obviously, if you have a lot of pools like Kyle does, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, it could be a little bit more difficult than if you have, just a hundred pools.
And it also has to do with your systems and your products. Like we have 1,000 products set up, so there's some spreadsheets back and forth. And yes, Skimmer will help with that. But there's a bit of legwork, but it'll pay off. Your return will be in just like I said, a whole salary gone.
And Curtis, yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm gonna shoot you over my email address, and I'll connect you to the appropriate person. I'll have to look at your account to see who your person is, but that's my email address, and we'll send that to you.
Curtis is pumped.
So Curtis and Chancey are full of them, and Cole here. I think that's it. There was a question about what do you feel stops your techs from leaving and starting their own one pull operations? And I think you answered that, right? It's being transparent about everything that's involved in running a business at scale, from buying batteries to, you know, all of the company wins to retail locations to managing fleet trucks. Like it's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
and we do have, so we're an open book, but we're also compartmentalized. So a service tech doesn't know how the chemicals get there. Like that's all the parts are there for them. He doesn't have to talk to customers. His route set up for him. Um, you know, it's set up that way to be efficient, but it's also set up that way so no one really knows how to do it all. That's the secret sauce. But then we're an open book to share how complicated and all the little details of the company. So
It's
kind of
been really neat, Kyle, to watch you up level over and over and over and over again. I remember doing a case study with you over 2 years ago at this point, and you've come such a long way in 2 years. And I want to thank you again for joining us on this webinar. if any of you are interested in receiving some coaching or consulting from Kyle, feel free to reach out to him. Again, his email address is on the screen now. It's Kyle at NVRGRN Nevergreen without the vowels.com. And if you have an
Awesome.
idea or Chancey can't find the third party site you mentioned,
Emailmeform.com.
emailmeform.com. She got it. Okay.
All right.
Very much. If you have an idea for a future webinar, we're going to send this recording out. We'll send the resources out. We'll send the slide presentation that we used today out. And if you have any suggestions for a future webinar idea, feel free to reply to that email. Until next time, everybody say bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for chatting.